with us today. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks very much, David, and welcome everyone. Firstly, for taking the time to participate in the webinar, and I guess also hopefully this will encourage you more to actually submit entries to the awards, and as well provide I guess some tools that you might find useful in that, plus also your day-to-day work. And in fact, some of these tools are embedded in some of the workshops that we run around consumer healthcare training and some of the strategy work that I do with different companies. So just in terms of the agenda, we will basically be following through the key areas that you actually will be looking to submit within the award submission. So covering off the first area, which is campaign, challenge and objectives. So I'll talk about some tools and some things on that. And at the end of each section, depending on how we go with time, there will be Q&As, and I'll attempt to answer your questions at each of the end of the sessions. If I don't get to answer all the questions, please don't worry. I will take those questions, and as we send out the video and the slides that are here, I'll also answer those questions for you. And if obviously there are more private sort of questions, then I'm happy to sort of send those to you individually as well. We'll then cover off the strategy and execution area before going on to results, which is pretty quick. And then David will cover off at the end some more of the details around the award entry categories and the instructions for those. So really what we're here to do is to encourage more of you to actually enter the awards and provide information on the process, as we talked about, to improve the award submissions. So there's two benefits of that being a judge. One is we want to see really good awards, and what we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years is the varying quality of submission. The better the submissions, firstly, the easier it is for us to judge and assess how well your project or initiative or campaign is actually run. But also the quicker it is, to be honest, for the judges sort of as well to recognise great work. And sometimes we've actually had to mark down submissions just because of the difficulty in understanding whether you met objectives and some of the other things like that. And more broadly, what I'm doing with CHPA is we're really focused on helping develop the capability of people working in the consumer healthcare industry, so some of these tools may be useful as well. So basically the process that we will go through today is, as I said, aligned to the way that the submissions work for the award. So the first part we'll cover off is the challenge and the objectives that you're setting for the campaign that you're looking to submit. And that represents around up to 30% of the total marking that we go through. So I'll talk through around the challenge statement and how to actually set smart objectives as we go through the process. The next section then, which represents 40% of the way that we score, looks at what is the insight behind the campaign, what is the strategy overarching, the guardrails you're using to make decisions around how you should implement the campaign. And then where a lot of focus often is on the implementation itself, the plans, the tactics, the examples of how you bring that to life, which incorporates, most importantly, the area of how you support health literacy and make sure you follow the guidelines around that as well. Last but not least is really where we allocate 30% of the score as against the results. So now these results need to link back to the objectives that set up the front. This is one of the key challenges that we often have in judging, is that because the objectives aren't really clear, and then when we come to the results aren't often very clear and aligned to the objectives. It's very, very difficult for us to sometimes to assess whether you've actually achieved the goals that you set out to achieve or not. So that's core and good for general marketing and sales practice, but it's also obviously important for us in terms of the way that we assess your submissions, etc. as well. So obviously, in the normal world, you would then look at taking those results back up to the challenges that you face in the business, and you would continue that cycle through the business. Obviously, we're more focused at this stage on the awards sort of themselves. So why do we start off with the problem? Well, what we really need to understand is where the challenge is that you face, what it is that you face as a business. So I love this quote: "We fail more often because we solve the wrong problem, because we get the wrong solution to the wrong problem." So the key thing to look at is that we generally are very good at implementing stuff, generally, but often the reason we fail to deliver our objectives is because we don't have the problem sorted out that which we really need to address in the organization. So that's why we recommend that you start off being really clear around the campaign challenge, and that links into the objectives. So outline the significant challenges that your brand or company is facing that you're seeking to address. They may be internal challenges within the business, they may be market challenges, they may be things to do with the product. And ideally there's some, not a lot, but some research or some other information behind that so that highlights why that challenge actually exists for you. Our suggestion is that you list, in terms of going through this process, the top 3 to 5 problems that you actually have, the challenges or opportunities, and why they need to be addressed in the campaign. And then I'll share a tool with you, which is to summarize that into what we call a brand or a business challenge statement that actually acts as the starting point for the campaign. So an example of that, so that process would look like, what does success look like? How will you measure it, by when, which you'll see links into the SMART objectives later on, and what do you have to do to actually deliver against that? Here's an example from a company I work with within the progesterone treatment sort of area some years ago. So that brand, I won't name the brand, becomes a recognized leader in the treatment of progesterone deficiency by fertility treatment professionals. So it's very clear here that they're playing in the treatment of progesterone deficiency, and they want to be a recognized leader, and they're targeting fertility treatment professionals. They're not looking at consumers, etc. They wanted to create a brand of X million dollars. That was the way that they were looking to measure it by 2020. Obviously, it's an old case, but that's the time frame they were looking at. They knew that they needed to create a strategy and activation plan that differentiates them from the different types of competitors they have, open new indication pathways for those professionals, and builds the capability to convert healthcare providers to recommend and script their brands. And you can sort of see then the sort of measures that come out of that. So that would be an example of a brand challenge statement. Again, if you've got questions or anything about this, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A section. So when we're looking at this as judges, and when you also should be looking at this within your business, a great challenge statement has 3 crucial characteristics. Number 1, it needs to be substantial. And that means that there's more chance of focusing the team on something that has significant implications for the brand and the business. It needs to be important and emotive. So ideally, the team and the stakeholders, so it may be a challenge that's led by marketing that also involves sales, or it may actually have other stakeholders involved. They really care about it. And ideally also it has a stretch, because that may, it pushes you to look outside the obvious. It may make you a little bit nervous, but it also should make you eager to get started. So it's not too much of a stretch. That means that the people working on it thinks it's impossible. So we would sort of see that having a challenge statement, or whether you structure it the way I'm suggesting in the template that's there, or whether it's structured in a slightly different way, setting a clear, motivating challenge is critical success. And it also is a really good starting point to understand where the campaign that you're working on needs to go. So that really looks at the starting point of the challenge statement that's there. The next thing, and this is probably the one of the key areas I'd like you to think about as you're putting your submission together, is objectives. And what we found is the lack of clarity around objectives really has a direct impact on both our ability as judges to score this other sections, but probably more importantly for you and your business, for you to actually look back and see, is my strategy and is what I'm implementing really delivering on the objectives I set out linked to the challenge. I'm going to talk about a couple of things with objectives that are quite important for us to have a look at. Firstly, we need to clarify what type of objective that we're actually talking about here. So I talk about the objective cascade. Are we talking about a broader business objective, like I need to grow sales for my brand? Are we talking about a broader marketing objective, which obviously can cover a number of different areas of the marketing mix, which may mean my strategy from a marketing perspective may be to increase the penetration of my brand or my product with a certain target audience, or it may be that I need to increase my distribution to make it more available to different consumers or to more consumers because I'm increasing the availability of the product in the marketplace, or is it a specific marketing communications objective? Okay, and each of them, there's a bit of overlap, but each of them need to be clear to allow us also to assess what's being done. So when we look at marketing communications objectives, they flow from, but are not the same as marketing objectives. The way that one way to look at it is communications can only create a condition in the mind. It can't force people to change their behavior. It can only indicate in their mind whether they are likely to change their feelings, attitudes, or beliefs that will lead to a desired behavior. So what does that mean? It means two things in terms of communications I'm sure you're aware of. Number one, can I actually see the communications? Is it sitting in the right place at the right time for when my brain is active and seeking information? And does the content of that communications address, give me the benefit and or facts or figures or whatever else that will change my feelings, attitudes, or beliefs? Now, that could be for a consumer. It could also be for a pharmacist, pharmacy assistant, whoever you're actually targeting as part of your campaign. So it's important to sort of understand what the differences are for that. So what we're going to do now to get a bit of interactivity, David, if you can launch the poll, is we're going to give you some examples of some measures. And I'd love to get you to very quickly just go through, there's actually 8 questions. So what's your answers to each of these? Is a new target customer a business, marketing, or Marcoms measure? Just tick in the box which one you think is right as you go through these, and we'll give you a couple of minutes and then I'll cover off the answers just as a starting point. So away you go. So David, I can't see the answers or the status of entry, so maybe you can just let me know when you think a fair number of people have actually answered, and we'll keep moving. And of course, if there are any questions, etc., please feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat sort of section.
We'll give it another minute. Not many people are answering. Just so you know, okay. It's anonymous, so nobody will see your answers if you get it wrong. So just have a go.
Yeah. I'm not judging you because I can't see. But it also gives you a chance to have a think and not have to listen to my voice as much.
Maybe give it another 30 seconds, got most people.
Right. Good on you for giving it a go. And it takes a little bit of time to get through. There's a few questions there, really.
Share the results now.
Yep, right. Okay, so these are the results which you should see coming up, and I'm just going to go through the examples that are there. So I won't get into a debate about this. You can argue sort of a little bit across the board, but yes, as most people have put forward, the new target customers are I would call them a marketing objective, because they can be then implemented. Targeting new customers can come through a number of different sort of areas. Marketing communications is one way to actually reach them. As the group has sort of said, changing consumer perception from X to Y. Yes, it is a marketing objective, but more specifically, it's a marketing communications objective. All marketing communications objectives are a subset of marketing overall, but it's quite important to understand whether it's a subset or whether it sits as part of the broader marketing sort of group. Oops, sorry. That's what happens with my mouse not working. Number 3, increase in online revenue is a business objective. Yes, that most people are aligned with that. I would definitely sort of agree with that, as you can sort of see. And build brand awareness is a marketing objective primarily. It could translate into marketing communications objectives, but I would think that you would need to be more specific on that in terms of going forward. Increasing brand followers on social media. I put that down as a MarComms objective because social media is just one channel to actually look at, so it would link more into your communication specifically. Coming back to building brand awareness, you also build brand awareness not just by marketing communication, but also by distribution, what happens on shelf, other things like that. So that's a reason there. Increasing brand followers on social media, definitely a MarComms objective. Again, it's a subset of marketing, but it's more of a MarComms specific objective as part of a tactic to achieve some larger marketing sort of objective. Grow market share, definitely a business objective. It could also be a marketing objective, again, that cascade, but it's a broader business objective. Do I want to grow my business through increasing market share within the category I'm operating in? The other ways to grow the business may be to increase the overall size of the category, other sources of growth as well. In terms of increasing brand association with a feature, that would definitely be a MarComms objective, but obviously could cascade up to those other areas sort of as well. I tend to say that that's not normally associated with a business objective, could be a marketing or a MarComms one. And increased Facebook views, definitely a MarComms sort of objective, again, that cascade from marketing. So what I ask you to think about, so as you can see, there's this cascade of objectives that go from business to marketing to MarComms. If you can be clear where you see that sit, it helps you set things up. And also, I guess when we're looking at the submissions, we will have a look to see where we sort of see those objectives come together. And it's good to see the flow from business to marketing to MarComms, because we can see how then the marketing activities are actually impacting the business as a whole. Happy again to take any sort of questions on those sort of things. The other thing that's really important is to have SMART objectives. Now, this is one of the key challenges, and it's often, having done this for a number of years, where I end up having to mark down things because people are not writing SMART objectives. And I'm sure most of you know what a SMART objective is, but just to re-emphasize that it needs to be specific. So it needs to link to the desired outcome, and understand, we need to understand why it's important. It needs to be measurable. So how can I see that you can measure these results? It needs to be attainable. So is there a realistic chance you're going to actually get there? It needs to be relevant. And most importantly, it needs to be time bound. So what is the time frame in which you're seeking to achieve the specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant objective that you're actually setting? And that time bound may be different depending on the different type of objective that you have. So the way I normally would structure SMART objectives, and it's quite specific. You may have other ways, but this is the way I found it very easy to get across. As an example, increase market share from 20%, which is the share we have today, to 50% of scripted business by 2020. Increase scripts written from X to Y by 2020. So you can see you've got the measure, which is scripts written. You've got also the determinant of where you want to get from to, and you've also got the time frame. or develop and launch new pack sizes and artwork by the end of the calendar year. So you may not have defined what those actually are specifically, but you've got a time frame that actually is there to do that. So again, what I'm going to do is ask David to open up the poll. We've got some examples of objectives here. I'd like to get your views on which ones are smart and which ones aren't. While you're going through this, the other reason why this is really important in terms of at least the submissions from the judge's perspective is this: when we come to looking at the results, we really need to understand what your SMART objectives are, so that when you put your results in, we can link directly the results that you've achieved back to the SMART objectives that are there, which often what we found is that people put in results and they may have really good results, but because we don't understand what the objectives were at the start, we don't know whether they were actually good or not, because you may get 50% growth in your sales, for example, but the market may be growing at 100%. So is that a good or bad result?
Give it another minute, Mike.
Yep, cool.
Most people will share the results.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so if we just have a look at the answers, they're sort of sitting in there. Great, 100%. The first one is definitely not a SMART objective for a number of different reasons. Neither is growing the brand in dollars. Like many, okay, so a bit more balanced in terms of the second one. The reason why to grow a brand in dollars versus year ago is not a SMART objective is what you could actually say versus year ago is the time frame, but it would normally have a year associated with it. So you might have a generic message of growing dollars versus year ago, but which year are you actually talking about? Okay, so if we were looking to judge this, are you talking about the end of the financial year for 2023? Are we looking, what specific time frame is sort of missing there? So I can see how people may look at that as being smart, but it's not specific enough to be a true SMART objective in the context of the way that we're looking at it. Build brand awareness of a brand among consumers and help by 10% in year one of launch. Yes, that is, because it's got very clearly what you're trying to do around building brand awareness. So yes, that is. Amongst the target consumers and healthcare professionals by 10% in year one of launch, which would be the first year that you launch that. Now, you could get into sort of saying it's not specific enough about how you're going to measure and build brand awareness, measure that. But one would assume behind that you've got a standard way to actually measure brand awareness amongst those two different groups. Grow market share of the brand in everyday pain segment from 2 to 2%. In year one of launch. Yes, that is, and most people have got that correct as well. Again, if you've got any questions around this or queries, please throw that in there. If you look at number 5, deliver engaging messages that resonate with the audience groups. No, that's definitely not, and good that everyone got that. Just keep in mind, all of these measures actually came from previous submissions as part of what we had to actually do in judging. So you can see where with that last one, it would be very, very difficult for us to assess, did you achieve that objective or not? Because it's not really clear enough. It's not SMART. And last but not least, 100% yes, right. Very, very clearly that is a SMART objective. So pretty good overall there. I think the key question we often find is, the time boundness of the measure and the specificity of what the actual measure is. So how do I know whether a message is engaging and resonating with audience groups? And who is the audience, right? So those sort of things are very, very difficult for us to assess. So if you like, this is a template that I use with people when I'm doing training, etc. Which, if you email me, I'm happy to send it. But it's like a checklist around writing the objective, and then when you actually have a look at it, once you've written it, is it specific, measurable, attainable, results oriented, and time bound. So before I move on, I haven't had any questions come up so far, either in the Q&A or the webinar chat. So I'm assuming I can keep moving on. But if there are any questions, then please feel free to throw them at me. Okay, so the next section is around strategy and execution and the criteria for that, which represents 40% of the weighting. But there's actually quite a lot sort of sitting within this that we need to cover off. So the things that we're looking for are the key insights that are the basis for the strategy, what the broader marketing strategies are and the marketing communication strategies are that you want to employ to meet the business challenge and to deliver against those SMART objectives that might be around branding, product strategy, promotion, distribution, pricing, all those other things. And what is the big idea which pulls that strategy together, which really then is the platform for all the creative ideas or the different things that you're actually going to do within the implementation. So what we are really keen to see is that core big idea before and understand what that is before jumping into all the examples of implementation that are sent through. And I would say also when you're doing things within your own business, being clear what the big idea is and then how that's spread across the different channels and mediums that you can use to communicate, whether that's through sales or whether that's through directly with consumers or pharmacists, etc., is really, really important. Just in terms of insights, what we define as an insight is it is a deep, profound understanding of a consumer or customer's beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors that leads to a brand building commercial opportunity. Normally, this requires a lot of information and understanding, but it leaps beyond just having data to really understand the deep drivers behind those beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors, and how they can be leveraged to address the challenge and the objectives that you actually have. Again, I'm happy to share this tool with you. The way that we structure that normally is we give each insight a title just that we can use internally. We frame that in something like, now that we understand these facts, behaviors, beliefs, attitudes, etc., there's an opportunity to turn that into something for the brand and company. And most importantly here, what is the supporting evidence behind that? So this might be market research you've done, trends in the market. It may be new things that you can do with the product, with claims and other things like that because of changes in regulations, whatever that actually is. So this is really, really important. We normally look for 5, in a really good insight, we really look for 5 independent sources of information. So in terms of your submission, if you want to use this tool, that's fine, but we would like to have a summary of the key information that actually backs up why you have this particular insight. An example of that this is from the UK, just so it's quite an old one, for Nurofen for Children. And this really helped grow the share of Nurofen for Children in the UK a number of years ago. Is now that we understand that parents are going through the most challenging times at 6 months, there's an opportunity to partner with the family so everyone gets the rest they deserve. And there's a whole bunch of facts and figures behind that are obviously linked into the company's work that they actually did, which led to a campaign that to some extent is still actually being used today for Nurofen for Children. So that's an example of that at a sort of high level. We then look at, so that's really the first part, the insights and the strategy. We then look at the execution and the criteria that we have for that. Again, this is combined as part of that 40% weighting. So what we're looking for is how were the insights, ideas, and strategy translated to implementation? How well was the campaign integrated across healthcare professionals and consumers, if that's relevant. How well was the campaign integrated across various elements of the marketing mix? How well was the campaign linked to sales implementation as well? I mean, assuming that's relevant for the particular challenge that you actually have. So things to include within the section, and I'll cover this a little bit more, is examples of how the strategy was executed, and outline the creative and the creative, novel and different approaches that you may have taken to actually bring that to life. So just in terms of that, in terms of the criteria that we're looking for, up until last year, we used to receive, in some cases, tens and 20s of different examples, just too much to actually have a look at. So what we're looking for is a maximum of 6 PowerPoint slides, you can have less if you like, of examples of the creative used during your campaign or other material to support your entry. For larger items, like shelf talkers or displays and other things like that, use photos. We're not looking for physical examples of these items. We want to see, ideally, how they're actually being used. The other thing that we ask is that there's a single page A1 poster summarizing your entry. This will be showcased at the award. So obviously, you might want to just think about what you're actually sharing with that. And ideally, the poster should cover the challenge, objectives, strategy and execution and results. So these will be displayed on A1 poster boards at the awards. So just think about that when you're thinking about your submissions. One other thing that we want to talk about is health literacy. Now, in the past, up until last year, we had this as a separate area within the submissions, but we've integrated this into the strategy. So health literacy and pulling that out within your submission is really important for 2 reasons. It is criteria we're using to judge for each of the awards that are there, but also there is an award going across all of the different submissions to look at who does which submission or submissions contribute most to supporting health literacy and self-care within the industry. So if we can't pull this part out from your entries, it's very, very difficult for us to judge you for that broader sort of award. So we have a vision. I'm not going to read all of that out. You can actually read it if you want from what's out there, but we do have a role as consumer healthcare professionals to provide the information and products to practice self-care, for consumers to practice self-care with confidence. We can assist in health literacy by providing clear, focused and usable information about health and medicines, using evidence-based information so that consumers are provided the options. And also we pass that information on to pharmacists and pharmacist assistants so that they can actually do that on your behalf. And really showing, I guess, one thing we look for in the submissions is not just specifically what your product itself is actually doing in terms of health literacy, but how your campaign contributes to the broader health literacy around the health area that you're looking to address with your products or services that are actually putting out there. So actually, one of the things that we can do as marketing is also using marketing, understand the consumer to improve the way that we communicate. So I'm going to give you an example here around how marketing communications can help. So which of these 2 claims will have the biggest impact on changing behavior? So both of these claims have exactly the same effect. So a poll's going to come up for this. So you will gain 5 years of life quitting smoking, or you will lose 5 years of life by smoking. Which of those 2 do you think is going to have the biggest impact on changing the behavior of people who smoke currently? Should be a quick one to answer. How are we going, David?
Yeah. Showing results now.
Cool. Interesting. 50-50. All right. So there is very, very clear evidence. We've done that. Due to, if you look at behavioral heuristics or economics and the way that people in general look at information, we have what's called a loss aversion bias. So the pain of losing something psychologically is 2 to 3 times as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something. So it's far more effective. So same outcome, but it's far more effective to say you will lose 5 years of life than you will gain 5 years of life. So simple things like that in the way that you actually communicate claims, features, benefits, whatever, and understanding things like loss aversion bias and a whole bunch of other heuristics in the way that consumers and people in general, actually, not just consumers, but also pharmacists, pharmacy assistants, other people, what drives them is really, really important in communications. We will cover off some of this stuff within the sales and marketing program that David mentioned before when we bring that to life. So these are the sorts of things also that will help, I think, in terms of the submission that's there. So again, are there any questions around this? Because we're moving through this pretty quickly. I think we might actually finish before the hour's up. But are there any questions around this area around insight, strategy, implementation in the health literacy sort of area for your business overall, or obviously for judging as well? I'm very happy to take more general questions if you'd like. Doesn't look like there are any, so that's great. Either I'm doing a good job of explaining things, or people are too daunted to ask the questions, or maybe the questions are a little bit more specific for your business and you don't want to do them in an open forum. So look, what I'm going to get to then is the last area, I guess, that we look at in terms of judging the awards, but also, I guess, having been an executive and heading up very large marketing teams, sales teams, and sitting on boards, it's also something I'm looking at in my own roles previously in corporate world, and also when I'm doing my consulting work. So it's really important that we tie back. Thanks, Danielle. It's really important that we tie back these results to the campaign SMART objectives, which is why I really focus in on that to start with. Ideally using hard data where possible, like sales, scan data, distribution figures, market research. But we know sometimes that's difficult, but where you can. One other thing that we have found, particularly for the marketing submissions, which most of these actually are, often there's not a lot of discussion around return on investment for marketing investment. If you do have that sort of information, and again, that's not shared, outside of the judges, and we're under confidentiality agreements and stuff like that, then they will be looked on very favourably, because providing that sort of information shows that you're actually, it's not just about how much you spend or the results you get, but are you getting a good return on investment? So if you go back, this is a very simple example. In terms of, and I like cycling, that's the reason why there's a mountain bike picture on this one. But anyway, so if you look at the campaign objectives that were put forward in this example, increasing volume market share of 50 basis points from X to Y, etc., you can then see the results on the other side and how they directly relate back to the objectives that were put in there. So that enables us, and in your own business, the ability to really clearly see, have I got the results I expected or not? If I have, then what do I learn from them? If I haven't quite got there, but there are other factors that came to play that you didn't foresee in the marketplace or whatever, it's also then worthwhile sharing, because obviously when you set objectives, 6 to 12 months potentially before you go and activate it, things can change. Who would have known COVID would have come along and, in January 2020, and how that sort of changed things. So if things like that have come along that have changed, or a competitor's launched, or those sort of things, then it's really important to put that down as well. So I'm not going to cover a lot more on this other than to say, look, really the way that we will be evaluating results is against the SMART objectives. We do look at sort of some broader sort of areas, but if the two don't link up, it's very, very difficult for us to actually score effectively how well your campaign has gone versus the objectives that are actually there. Otherwise, it becomes very, very subjective for the judges that are actually going through this. And the reality is, for your business, it becomes very subjective as well. So That's how we'll look at the results. So what I'm going to do now, again, any questions on that, please, I'm happy to answer now or at the end. I'm going to pass this now back to David, who's going to take you through the awards themselves and what's there. And then if you've got any questions for David, then obviously please throw those in as well.
Thanks, Mike. Great stuff. So that's your 7 marketing award categories there on the screen. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. I will say for the best launch of consumer healthcare product, that includes switches and relaunches. For the best professional marketing campaign, this is for HCPs that directly interface with consumers. For best digital social media campaign, this is for standalone or multimedia campaigns. So it does not include an e-commerce platform. Best PR campaign is for standalone or multimedia campaigns, existing or new products. For all 7 marketing award categories, campaigns must have commenced within the last 18 months. So that's from 31st of January to now. And when you're sending in your award entries, please, for all 7 award categories, please keep it under 1,000 words. We don't really need War and Peace for this one. So if you go to the next slide, Mike, 5 things to know. I won't go through all of these, but with number 3, I'll just point out, in the event of any complaint in relation to a product or program being upheld, the judges have the right to revoke the awards. So that's with number 3. And with number 4, CHP Australia and the Self-Care Excellence Award judges often see entries that would be good for another category. So, for instance, you might have an entry that you put in for small budget, but it's also a PR campaign. So, in those cases, obviously entering in the campaign for multiple categories is going to increase your chance of winning. So we encourage you to do that. If you go to the next slide, Mike. If you enjoyed today, please give us some good feedback, but also let your colleagues know that it's worthwhile to come along to the awards and get involved. It's on the 2nd of November, like I said at the start of the event. We ask that you register your intent by the 14th of July. The reason we do this is obviously we get a lot of award entries, and it's nice to give our judges a heads up on how many entries to actually expect. As you can imagine, it's a daunting job our judges have, and it's a lot of entries. So yeah, we just ask that you get back to us by the 14th of July, and you don't have to send in your final entry until the 1st of August. That's it. Next slide, Mike.
Questions? Yeah, any questions on that for David or from any of the other things I've covered? We will also just open it up for a poll to get your feedback in a second. But are there any questions? I haven't had any so far. So as Daniel said, maybe we've just done a really great job, or maybe people are waiting for the video. But maybe David, if we put up the poll for we have run this session about 2 years ago, and we haven't run it for the last couple of years. Just we didn't really know whether it was worthwhile doing this to remind people, etc. But then when we looked at the feed, that what came in last year in terms of the awards, etc., we could see that, to be honest, the quality of some of the awards had dropped a little bit. So we decided to do this again this year. Again, as a judge, it really does help us as well. So there's some benefits to us. So it would be really good to get your feedback on whether you see this as a value or not, and any other feedback on how we could improve this, because that will also help us decide whether it's worthwhile doing it again next year.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, we'll finish it up today. Thank you so much, Mike, for taking the time to speak to our members today. We really appreciate it. It's open to members and non-members, the awards, so we'd really encourage you to send in an entry, and we'll keep you posted on upcoming events.
Yeah, look, if anyone wants those templates, then I'll send out the presentation, but if you want the templates, let me know as well. I'm very happy to share those.
Thanks, Mike. See you, everyone.
See you, everyone. Thanks.